Shalom. This week's Torah portion is Parashat Eikev, beginning in Sefer Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 7 and verse 12. The portion of Eikev emphasizes that love for Hashem needs to be expressed in action and that faithfulness to the divine commandments brings blessing. And here in our Parsha, Moshe warns against the dangers of forgetting the one who sustains us or straying from his ways. And as the nation prepares to enter into the land of Israel, he describes both the material and the spiritual aspects of the land with deeply beautiful words of praise. Our portion of Eikev is a direct continuation of last week's Torah portion of Vethanan. I wasn't able to record a message for last week's Parsha, so today let's start with a look back at Vethanan in order to better relate to Eikev, because the sequencing of these two portions is deliberate and exquisite. There is a thread that runs through both portions, a thoughtful spiritual progression that Moshe is crafting, moving from what we can call the awakened consciousness of Vethanan to living the covenant of Torah in our every step as is manifest in Eikev. So start to open up your heart. Of all our senses, which plays the most important role in the development of a spiritual life? Which is the most indicative of the depth of our personal relationship with Hashem? Throughout Torah, we find that the sense of hearing is primary, taking precedence even over seeing. But what does it really mean to hear? To really hear requires focus and attention, as well as humility and trust. As everybody knows, the Shema Yisrael, the Hear, O Israel prayer in chapter 6 of the portion of Vethanan, is the hallmark of faith and the quintessential declaration of God's absolute unity. But in Hebrew, the word Shema means more than simply to hear. As the Midrash Sifri explains, to truly hear means to understand, to accept upon oneself, to internalize, in order to do. The word Shema in all its forms signals a leap from passive hearing to the deep comprehension that leads to making a commitment, to act. The ear is, after all, only the portal. The deeper level of listening incorporates belief, acceptance, and commitment, all in one act. Actually, this is exactly what opening up your heart means. There's a world of difference between hearing and listening. In the language of Torah, to hear is to open the ear, but to listen is to open the heart. Hearing is a passive, involuntary physical process of the brain registering sound. There's no choice involved, and it requires no conscious effort. The sound of a motor running in the street, a bird on the windowsill, someone's voice drifting across the room, all these reach the ear and are heard without asking permission. But listening is a conscious, intentional, cognitive process that involves attention and interpretation and comprehension. It's an act of the soul. Listening means I turn my attention toward the sound. I lean into it. I not only open my ear, but my mind and my heart. I'm present to receive, and I allow the words to matter. I am ready for these words to make a difference to me. And then there's hearing without listening, like the way a spouse might mindlessly nod a response while reading the newspaper, or the way somebody says, without looking up from their device's screen. The words reach the ear, but they go no further. They remain at the surface like drops of rain on a stone. But when there is listening, the words sink in like rain on a parched field. They're received and understood, and the words bear fruit, which is Torah's intention. This is all a major theme in last week's Parashat Vethanan. The portion is replete with forms of the word Shema, each time with a different shade of meaning, a different nuance of listening, but always pointing inward, and all geared towards an awakening of who God is and being attentive to what he has spoken. Chapter 4 opens in verse 1 with the words, "And now, Israel, listen to the decrees and to the ordinances that I teach you to perform, so that you may live, and you will come and possess the land that Hashem, the God of your forefathers, gives you." In verse 12, Moshe reminds the people that at Mount Sinai, Hashem spoke to them from the midst of the fire, and they saw nothing. They only heard the sound of words. Chapter 5 begins, Moshe called all of Israel and said to them, "Listen, O Israel, the decrees and the ordinances that I speak in your ears today." And in chapter 6, following Moshe's exhortation of, "You shall listen, Israel, and beware to perform all of God's commandments," then we find the Shema itself, Torah's preeminent call to listen. Beginning in verse 4, "Hear, O Israel, Hashem is our God, Hashem is the one and only." So open up your heart in the deepest way. In all of the instances wherein forms of the word Shema appear throughout Vethanan, it's never just about sound waves entering the ear. It's about focusing one's attention completely, clearing the inner noise so that the divine voice can be received and accepted. When the Torah declares Shema Yisrael, it's not saying, "Let these syllables pass through to your eardrums, Israel," or even, "Remember that there's a God in the world, Israel," but rather, the words Shema Yisrael call us to turn towards the one who speaks, to incline not just the head, but the will, to let the words sink in deeply within us until they change the way that we walk in the world. This is listening that becomes an act of covenant, a conscious, intentional embrace that transforms fleeting sound into lasting truth. Shema Yisrael means, let this truth of the one God enter the deepest chambers of your heart. Take the words in and make them a part of yourself. Let it reshape you every time you hear it, and let it guide your steps. Let it change your life. And now this brings us to this week's Torah portion, Parashat Eikev. Eikev marks the transition from hearing to listening-inspired doing. Vethanan is the parsha of listening, and Eikev is the parsha of walking, of action, of proving with our steps what our ears have heard. When we cross from Vethanan into Parashat Eikev, expressions of this Shema listening language are still present, but now they're inseparably and explicitly tied to action. Hearing is no longer preparatory, it is validated and completed by doing. Parashat Eikev declares, if you have truly internalized this awareness, then it will reorder your behavior, your priorities, your daily life. The Parsha begins in chapter 7 and verse 12 with the words, "And it will be Eikev, because you will listen to these judgments and observe and perform them. Hashem your God will keep for you the covenant." The word Eikev is translated here as because, but its true literal meaning is heel. In Midrash Tanchuma, the sages play with this double meaning, and they point out that the heel is the part of the body that provides proper balance and propels you forward. Hearing without action is like a body without feet. It may be alive, but it cannot go anywhere. In Torah's vision, doing is not an optional sequel to listening. It's natural completion. Just as rain is meant to nourish the earth so that seeds will sprout, Hashem tells us that his words are meant to nourish our hearts so that deeds will grow. If there's no doing, the listening was never real. The proof is in the movement, and this is why Eikev repeats the call to listen, but every time it's bound tightly to verbs of action, because you will listen and guard and do, and you shall guard the commandments, to walk in his ways and fear him, if you will surely listen to love Hashem your God and to serve him. So open up your heart deeper still. Chapter 11 and verse 13 of Parashat Eikev begins the second paragraph of the daily, twice recited Shema prayer with the words, "And it will come to pass if you will surely listen to my commandments that I command you today, to love Hashem your God and to serve him with all your heart and with all your soul." The degree to which you've listened will be proven by what follows: observing, doing, living in alignment with what you have received. As Rabbi explains, this is not only about obedience, but about constancy. Not a one-time moment of inspiration, but an ongoing responsiveness, a day-by-day commitment that's proven through lived choices. And this is where the Torah speaks to the deepest human truth. We are what we do. Our values are not the ideals we say we believe. They're the way that we behave when nobody is watching. And Torah knows that our hearts also follow our deeds. When you act according to the truth that you've listened to, even on days when the heart feels dull and even on days when you lack motivation, the action itself rekindles the listening. The doing feeds back into the hearing, making it deeper, steadier, and more enduring. This is the bridge between these two Torah portions, from hearing to doing, from words received to life transformed. So open up your heart deeper than ever. The deepest lesson of all of this for all of us is that hearing with listening shapes reality. What you choose to hear, what you listen to, determines how you live. Every single day, competitive voices bombard our ears. Voices of fear, of temptation, of cynicism, of denial and falsehood. Manipulative, destabilizing, and toxic voices versus the still, small voice of God that seeks our ears, manifest in voices that he sends to us, voices of truth and belief and courage and faith. And all the voices are heard in the physical sense, but only one voice leads to life, and it will not be recognized unless we listen. To live to one's fullest potential is to train your ear for listening to truth and to move your life in that direction. To listen to Hashem means to quiet the noise, to incline the heart, to let his words disturb our complacency and call us to a higher path. So much of human failure comes from the breakdown between hearing and listening. The sin of the spies, the original cause of exile and the concealment of the divine presence to this day, is about broken hearing. The generation of the spies heard the report of the land, but they didn't listen to Yehoshua and Kalev's voice of faith. They chose to hear the false report, and they refused the voice of faith. In the words of the Holy Zohar, their hearing was polluted. They received evil speech into their ears, and they let it govern their actions. And this polluted hearing resulted in fear, which led to rebellion. They let the wrong voice take root. And once the wrong voice is planted within, that voice takes over, and it takes over the direction of one's steps. This is why Moshe keeps exhorting the children of Israel to listen in these portions. He's repairing the nation's hearing before they step into their destiny, into Eretz Israel. The tikkun, the fixing for the generation entering the land, both then and now, is to reverse this, to hear and listen to the true voice and to guard against false voices, to act in faith, even when the road ahead looks daunting. Torah's vision and goal is to heal our hearing, to teach us how to listen, to let the ear be the gate of the heart. When we truly listen, the words we receive become our compass. They guide our steps through the desert that we all must traverse, and they bind us to the God who speaks to each of us, each moment of each day.